I was once the devoted husband who believed marriage was sacred. Amanda and I shared what I thought was the perfect life together in our suburban home. The dinner dates, weekend getaways, and plans for our future all felt real. Then I discovered messages on our shared iPad. My wife was having an affair with her coworker. Instead of a dramatic confrontation, I chose to disappear completely. When she returned to an empty house, she had a complete meltdown. Now everyone is calling me the villain. Before I share this heartbreaking story, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button so you never miss these real-life stories. I met Amanda at my best friend Tyler's wedding 5 years ago. I was 35, established in my career as a software engineer at a respected tech company, and ready to find someone to build a life with. Amanda caught my eye immediately during the reception. She had this infectious laugh that carried across the room, drawing me toward her like a magnet. We ended up talking for hours that night, losing track of time as we discovered shared interests in hiking, classic movies, and exotic cuisine. Our first date happened just 3 days later at a small Italian restaurant downtown. I still remember how she looked in her blue dress, how the candlelight caught in her eyes when she smiled. Something about her felt different from anyone I had dated before. We took long walks through Jefferson Park, spent weekends exploring small towns nearby, and quickly became inseparable. After 6 months of dating, I knew she was the one. I planned the proposal, meticulously hiding the ring in my jacket pocket as we returned to that same Italian restaurant where we had our first date. When the dessert arrived with the ring perched atop it, her eyes widened with surprise and joy. The whole restaurant erupted in applause when she said yes. Our wedding was everything we wanted, intimate and meaningful, with only 60 guests at a rustic venue overlooking the lake. Both our families got along wonderfully, and I remember thinking how lucky I was that everything seemed to fall into place so perfectly. For our honeymoon, we spent 2 glorious weeks in Hawaii watching sunsets on the beach and making plans for our future together. The first 2 years of marriage were nothing short of blissful. We bought a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb with a backyard perfect for barbecues and future children playing. We established routines that made life feel secure and joyful, cooking elaborate meals together on Sundays, and having movie nights every Friday where we would take turns picking films. My career was taking off with a promotion to senior engineer, bringing both higher pay and more flexibility. Amanda was equally successful at her marketing firm, recently landing a major client that she had been pursuing for months. We celebrated our 2nd anniversary at an upscale French restaurant, toasting to many more years of happiness. We talked seriously about starting a family after our 3rd anniversary, both agreeing that we wanted at least 2 children. As a step toward that bigger family, we adopted Max, a golden retriever puppy, who quickly became the center of our world. Taking him for walks in the neighborhood helped us build friendships with other couples nearby, creating a social circle that made our house truly feel like home. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but looking back, I can pinpoint when things began to shift. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, about 3 years into our marriage. Amanda mentioned a new team at work, including a colleague named Daniel who had transferred from the New York office. At first, his name came up casually in conversation, just another coworker in her stories about office politics. Then came the emergency meetings that would keep her at the office until 9 or 10 at night. The urgent weekend work sessions that could not possibly be rescheduled. I noticed her smiling at her phone more often, quickly turning it away when I entered the room. When I asked casually who she was texting, the answer was always vague, something about coworkers or her mother. One night, I reached for her phone to check the time when mine was charging and found it locked with a new password. When I asked about it, she explained that her company had implemented new security protocols for all employees. It seemed reasonable enough at the time, though a small knot of unease formed in my stomach. Amanda began spending more time at the gym 3 or 4 nights a week instead of her usual 2. She bought new clothes, changed her hairstyle, started wearing perfume brands she had never shown interest in before. Our intimate moments became less frequent with Amanda, often claiming exhaustion from work or headaches that conveniently appeared right at bedtime. The first time she forgot our anniversary, I was genuinely surprised. In previous years, she had always made such a big deal about remembering important dates. This time, when I presented her with concert tickets to her favorite band, she looked momentarily confused before apologizing profusely, blaming an overwhelming project at work for her forgetfulness. Despite these changes, I pushed away my growing concerns. One evening, I borrowed her laptop to check my email when my own computer was updating. A message notification popped up with just a preview visible, something about missing someone and looking forward to tomorrow. I clicked away, immediately feeling guilty for almost invading her privacy, telling myself it was probably just her sister or a friend. There were nights when Amanda came home smelling like unfamiliar cologne, explaining that she had been in close quarters with clients or coworkers all day. Weekend family plans were increasingly canceled due to urgent work matters that could not possibly wait until Monday. I threw myself into planning special moments to reconnect, like surprise dinner reservations or weekend getaways, only to find her distracted and constantly checking her phone throughout our time together. I convinced myself that every marriage goes through phases, that this was just a temporary rough patch, while Amanda adjusted to new responsibilities at work. I believed in our vows and the commitment we had made to each other, and I was determined to be patient and understanding while she navigated this busy period in her career. Then came the day that changed everything. I was supposed to fly to Seattle for a 3-day conference, something Amanda had marked in her calendar weeks ago. When the keynote speaker fell ill and the conference was postponed, I found myself with an unexpected free weekend. I decided to surprise Amanda by coming home early, stopping to pick up ingredients for her favorite dinner on the way. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed there was no car parked there. Amanda had mentioned having a quiet weekend, catching up on work at home. Assuming she had just gone out for groceries or coffee, I let myself in through the front door, calling out her name with no response. The house was unusually quiet, except for Max running to greet me, more excited than normal, as if he had been alone longer than usual. Walking into the kitchen, I noticed 2 wine glasses in the sink, one with a faint lipstick mark that matched Amanda's favorite shade. An unfamiliar bottle of expensive Cabernet sat half empty on the counter, not the kind we typically bought. Something felt off. I headed upstairs to change my clothes and noticed small things out of place: a throw pillow on the floor beside our bed. The sheets rumpled, despite Amanda always making the bed each morning. Opening the hamper to toss in my travel clothes, I spotted a blue dress shirt crumpled at the bottom, definitely not mine, and much too large to be Amanda's. My heart pounding, I sat down at our shared desktop computer and logged into our joint credit card account. There it was, a charge from the previous afternoon at the Westlake Hotel downtown, just 15 minutes from our house. A hotel charge when I was supposed to be out of town was difficult to explain away as anything innocent. I moved to the iPad we shared for household matters and found it unlocked. The messaging app was still open, and I saw exchanges between Amanda and someone saved simply as D. The most recent message read, "Missing you already. Yesterday was amazing. Cannot wait until next Friday." In that moment, the air seemed to leave the room. I sat there, staring at the screen, my brain struggling to process what was now undeniable. The woman I had built my life around, planned a future with, was betraying me in the most intimate way possible. Every late-night meeting, every canceled plan, every password change suddenly made perfect, horrible sense. After the initial shock wore off, I made a decision not to confront Amanda immediately. Instead, I would gather more information to understand the full extent of what I was dealing with. I put everything back exactly as I had found it, texted her that my flight had been delayed, and checked into a nearby hotel to plan my next steps. Over the next week, I conducted what felt like an investigation into my own marriage. One evening, I followed Amanda after work and watched from my car as she met Daniel in a restaurant parking lot. They embraced and kissed before walking inside together, not as colleagues but as lovers comfortable with public displays of affection. I accessed our Google location history, which we had set up years ago to share with each other for safety. The map showed multiple visits to the Westlake Hotel and an apartment complex. I did not recognize, all coinciding with her supposed late meetings and work emergencies. Through our shared cloud storage, I discovered an email account I had never seen before. The password was a variation of one Amanda commonly used, and inside I found months of exchanges, planning meetings, sharing intimate photos, and discussing their feelings for each other. The emails dated back 8 months, meaning this was no brief indiscretion but a sustained deception. The most painful discovery came when I read messages where Amanda mocked our marriage and me personally. She complained to Daniel about how boring I had become, how predictable our life was, how she felt she had settled by marrying me. She shared private details about our intimate life, turning sacred moments into ammunition for ridicule. I learned that Amanda had even introduced Daniel to several of her friends, people who had sat at our dinner table and accepted our hospitality while knowing about her betrayal. The depth of the deception was staggering, extending far beyond just Amanda to include